Joining me now in the studio is Jean Case. She is the author of Be Fearless. She's also the CEO of Case Foundation. It's a wonderful book. Its subtitle is 5 Principles for a Life of Breakthrough and Purpose. Look at this. Okay, I like the cover too. Jean,
thanks.
How are you? Oh, there it was for a second. Okay.
I'm great to be with you, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, you're first female chairman of the National Geographic Society, and you've done 1,000 other things, including being on the board of Accelerate Brain Cancer Cure and all these wonderful things in the world. And then you decided to write this book.
I did.
So, obviously, I'm dying to know what the 5 principles are.
Sure.
So, quick summary, and then we'll dive into some of the details.
Sure, well, let me give you just a little bit of a backdrop on why the book. The book is called Be Fearless, but it's really intended to be a message that recognizes that everyone faces fear. Fearless is pushing past it. But my career has given me a rare opportunity to be in communities both across the United States and around the world. Between my work with National Geographic, I spent my career in tech before we created the Case Foundation. And I saw one thing, Cenk, everywhere I went, people have ideas about how to make the world better, but sometimes they get really caught up in either fear or this concern that it can't be me or I'm not the one, that they think they need something special like genius or graduating from the right school. So at the Case Foundation, we undertook some research just a few years back, and we uncovered these 5 principles that are present wherever transformational change takes place. And we were able to debunk the myth that it takes some superhuman special quality to break through with a big idea.
You know, it's funny because we were just talking about it on the show yesterday. So we do a post game that's just for our members, and where we talk about our personal lives more. I literally said that yesterday, and I didn't, and I hadn't read this yet. Okay,
yeah.
And I talk about courage. It's not like there's like superhumans out there.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Who are magically not afraid of anything, right? And if they are, they've got a problem because they should be afraid of oncoming traffic and guns, right? That's not human, right?
Right.
It just takes courage to get beyond that.
That's
so,
right.
I do want to talk a little bit later about things that where the things that hold us back, right? And where other people impose fear upon you. But generally speaking, the really successful people that you talk to that got past that and became fearless, what was the tricks of the trade?
Sure, well, what I try to do is take the reader kind of behind the curtains of success stories. Many they will know, many they will not. And there's a chapter in there called Fail in the Footsteps of Giants, where I take well-known success stories that people are pretty familiar with, but what they don't know is sort of the road of fear and failure that led to the success. And really, it's a storytelling book. I do talk about the 5 principles, and I'm happy to go through them with you, but I try to bring them to life through these stories that I tell. So Oprah Winfrey, fired from her job as a newscaster, told she just wasn't right for television. Steven Spielberg wasn't accepted into film school, right? Imagine that. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school basketball team and went home and cried in the closet. So the idea is anybody we look at that we define as successful or that has broken through, it's easy for their stories to get sanitized. And we think, oh, they never had any challenges or problems. So particularly if someone's trying to take forward their own idea, they need to know actually those failure moments might be the most important moment to pay attention. It can vault them, it can teach them, it can help them apply the lessons and perfect the idea going forward.
Is the idea that one, of course, don't get discouraged by failure, but most importantly, learn from failure?
Learn from failure. So the 5 principles quickly. The first one is we say make a big bet. Make big bets and make history. Has to start with a big idea, not aiming for incremental change, right? The second is be bold, take risks. If you're trying to do something big and something new, you're going to be taking some risks. The third is this failure point, and we say make failure matter. Yes, apply the lessons of failure and use them to help you grow and push you further on what you're pursuing. The fourth is reach beyond your bubble, and that really is about building unlikely partnerships and working with people different than yourself, who can broaden your perspectives and maybe cover your blind spots as you go forward. And the last is my fave, let urgency conquer fear. Because for many people, it's that almost sense of urgency or something kind of really beating inside of them that will push them out of their comfort zone to try something new.
We talk a lot about politics on this show, and I know you don't mean it in a political way, and you work with everybody in Washington because you've got a charity and et cetera. But it really does sound like you're making a progressive case, like the fierce urgency of now, go for big change.
You got it. Yes, I quote Martin Luther King in the urgency because he said we can't take that, tranquilizing drug of gradualism, right? That's when he talked about the fierce urgency of now.
This is why I love the book. I mean, these are all things I say on the show all the time, right? And so I did that quote 2 days ago on the show.
Did you? Yeah, of course, for Martin Luther King Day, probably, right?
Yeah, and on that day as well, and I repeated it again a couple of days ago. So now, one of the things that I want to talk about, though, is the folks that instill fear in you, and it's not a black and white world, and they don't mean anything bad by it 9 out of 10 times.
Right.
They're actually trying to help you. So it might be your parents who say, hey, no, don't go do something crazy and try to become an actor, become a doctor, that's gonna be better for you.
Right.
And it's because they genuinely wanna look out for you.
They're trying to protect, that's right. That's right.
Or even in the business world, whoa, that's too risky, don't.
That happened to me, and I tell the story in my book. So I had a good career track going. I was in my 20s, and I had landed at a really great role at GE that I was recruited into. I was tapped to be in the management program, so I was clearly, in line to be sort of soaring there. And this startup down the road gave me a call and said, will you come over? And I was working at the time in what was the early internet businesses. It was called online services, and I made the leap. But when I did that, and that company would become AOL, okay, it was the start of AOL. And when I did that, I mean, people around me were like, you're crazy, what are you doing giving up this, good thing? But I felt like it was worth giving up a good thing really to pursue a great thing, which I knew, I believed in the promise of AOL to democratize ideas and access to communication and information. And I made the leap and I never looked back. But yes, people around me thought they were really helping me by saying, don't do that, you're crazy. And of course, I never looked back.
Right, now, but let's talk about balance, because there are certain situations where you're gonna make the big bet and it's gonna be the wrong bet,
That's right.
And by the way, that will have consequences for other people. So I made a big bet in my life to stop being a lawyer and do this instead, do media instead. And
that's a big bet.
Yeah, and it had consequences for my dad, who had to deal with me coming back home all the time
and
having to put up with me.
Yes.
And so there is a little bit of, my friends challenged me on this. Are you being selfish by taking that big bet? Because it does have consequences for people around you. How do you address that?
Well, I address it in the book, particularly in the risk section in the book, and I try to use tips and techniques for how to assess the risk you're gonna take. Is it reckless? Is it measured? And have you understood the risk of not taking the risk? Are you ready to not take the risk and live with that consequence the rest of your life? So in your case, you had a really great opportunity that you were chasing. And chances are, if you hadn't done that, later you might look back and say, what have I done? So some of this is just reflecting on the risk of not taking the risk, but also understanding this reckless versus measured risk.
Yeah.
And it's different for everyone, right? If you're working 2 jobs, you can't just up and quit and go try something new. You're gonna have to find a way to work that into your life, make small steps towards your big idea.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one other thing that that's why, again, I like the book so much, is that we talk about on the show all the time, is that, look, there are consequences to taking risk. But there's also great reward if you find the thing that you love.
Oh, come on, there's change the world kind of stuff. So the first story I tell in the book, the first chapter is called Start Right Where You Are, with the idea that no matter who you are or what you have something that you can use to start taking your idea forward. Sole practitioner in mental health, Dr. Barbara Van Dalen out of DC. She only has an answering machine. She doesn't even have an assistant. She starts seeing military families during the peak of the war who needed a lot of extra mental health support. She gives 1 hour a week pro bono. She realizes, wow, I'm gonna ask some of my friends, so she has her friends. Then she realizes this should be a national movement. And she creates something called Give an Hour. And she gets thousands and thousands of doctors from around the country to join her. Today, over $25 million in free mental health care for our military families has been given through Give an Hour. It's a great example of someone who just started right where she was without a lot of resources and went for it. The book is a story of ordinary people who do extraordinary things.
Yeah, and so the point I really want to drive home is you don't have to be superhuman. You don't have to not have any fear to begin with, but also Look, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's a candidate we supported, and I helped found Just Democrats, which found her, et cetera. And now in hindsight, it seems like, well, she's a superstar.
Right.
Everybody knew it.
Nobody knows that hard climb to get there, right?
Right. But she actually took a risk, and she had to believe in herself. Remember, she was an activist, but she was also a bartender because she needed to work.
Right.
And so I remember the early days when no one believed in her.
Right.
So you've got to at least have enough courage, even when everyone around you doubts, to believe in yourself.
Well, what I like to say is there's a lot of people that might count you out, no matter who you are. I mean, it's happened to me. It's probably happened to you. Don't be someone to count yourself out. Like, the book really is a clarion call. There's never been a better time to innovate and think about how to go forward with new ideas. We need all the ideas and all the people on the field trying to make the world a better place. And it's really a playbook to help them get started.
So it's a playbook, and it's got stories of other folks who've gone through these experiences. It's called Be Fearless, 5 Principles for a Life of Breakthroughs and Purpose. Jean Case, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
Really appreciate
Jake.
it.
Good to be with you.